Good morning and welcome to Meals with Melissa. I have a good one for you. I'm sure you're all probably a little overdone by Thanksgiving. Oh, I see that my cupboards are open in the back. Let me close that really quick. Not like you need to see all of my background here. So anyway, so I decided to give you something low carb, super simple. You know, that's kind of how I roll at this point because, of course, everybody's biggest obstacle is time. So anytime that we can give you something convenient, easy, and of course, this one's actually freezable as well. So if you need to just grab something in the morning, defrost it, take it with you, and eat it at work, it works out great. Now, in the past, I actually have done like a breakfast burrito, but this is actually a better version because it really doesn't involve any gluten or carbs, at least in the fact of, you know, something that's processed. So it keeps it super simple. We're just going to use eggs and some fillings. It's almost like an omelet, but we're going to make it a little bit more like a breakfast burrito, a little bit easier to eat. And like I said, portable. So what we're going to do today, now I've already cooked the sausage. Now, of course, you all know that I love Isernio's chicken sausage. It comes in 3 flavors. It's super simple to cook up and take with you. I love it for breakfast wraps, but it works just as well for this breakfast burrito as well. But I did cook that in advance just because it takes a minute. Everything else we're going to put together right now. So super simple. I've grabbed it. I've already actually heated my pan. I got my chicken sausage in the background. I might move my camera here a little bit just so you can see what I'm doing. But if everything's really just ready, cut up, prepared, ready to go here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of olive oil, extra virgin, that way it's not overly processed. I'm going to put it in my hot pan and I'm actually going to saute a little bit in the way of vegetables. Now, I'm using mushrooms and onions, but you could also use things like spinach, green peppers, or even any color peppers, because of course they all have different nutrients in them. Just something to give it some extra flavor. I am going to use a little bit of cheese today, only because I am a little bit higher fat, a little bit lower carb right now, just because of what my goals are for the moment. But of course, do whatever fits your macros, right? That's kind of the point, is making sure that it fits your macros depending on what your goals are. Now, I have a lot of people ask me, well, what should my macros be? Well, that really depends on multiple things. That depends on what your goals are. It depends on where you're currently at, what your body fat percentage is. Just remember that, you know, if you're eating a lot of carbs, even healthy carbs, even things like apples, you know, those do turn into sugar fairly quickly in your system. And of course, if you're providing your body all it needs in energy by eating a lot of carbohydrates, why would your body target fat as fuel? So hence the reason why I'm a little bit low carb right now, especially after Thanksgiving, because I really, you know, I plan for it. That's how I roll. For Thanksgiving, I eat whatever I want, but definitely my body was not happy about the situation. It let me know what it thought. So I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to my pan. And I'm going to throw in my mushrooms and my onions just to give it a little bit of saute. And just move that around just a little bit. And I'm going to use the same pan to cook my egg, okay? Again, I'll include this down below when I'm finished, but that'll just take a minute. So meanwhile, I am going to break an egg and mix it up. Now, if you are not choosing to go as higher in fats, you can also use egg whites instead of the whole egg, but realize that most of the nutrition is in the yolk. So thereby, you know, it's kind of a balance right there, you know, kind of hitting and missing some stuff. Okay, so I'm going to throw that in here. What I'm making is somewhere between like an omelet and a crepe, although I'm not adding all the fun things for a crepe, but I'm going to make it just as thin as, so it kind of becomes my tortilla. And that's what my goal is on that one. Now, if you need a little bit more egg, you know, do 2. As a matter of fact, I think I might do 2 just because I'd like a little bit more space to throw in all my fillings in there. Okay, now, again, if you really struggle to get breakfast in the morning and you need to make these ahead and stick them in the freezer, all you have to do when you're finished is wrap them up in wax paper, stick them in a Ziploc bag, and throw them in your freezer. You can pull them out and heat them up as needed. Okay, so those are going really good. I'm going to add another egg because I just want to. Okay, and again, I'm a little bit higher in fat right now on my macros, so I have no problem adding the yolks to that. And I'm going to throw just a tiny bit of salt. Now, let me just say a little bit about sodium. You know, a lot of people, when they start eating a little bit healthier, they do try to avoid salt, which, you know, in general is a good idea, because most of us get in the American diet way too much sodium. If you start looking at food labels, there's so much sodium in soda. I mean, almost everything. It's crazy. Problem being is when you do start eating a lot cleaner, you actually need to add sodium to your diet just because it's the electrolyte balance in your system that's important. And when you eat really clean, you're not getting all that salt coming from the processed food. I've actually had a situation like that where my client was really struggling because she just felt off and was retaining a lot of extra water. And honestly, it was because she wasn't getting enough salt instead of too much, like the majority of us do. All right, so I'm gonna finish this up and I'm gonna throw this in a little, just a container while I cook my egg. I'm actually not even gonna add any more oil to my pan. There's plenty, and not only that, it's a nonstick pan. Okay. At my house, we go through pans like there's no tomorrow. It can't be helped. We just pretty much destroy them on a regular basis. So honestly, I just buy a little bit like the less expensive nonstick pans, just because it just makes it easier. And when they're trashed, we just throw them away and start over again. All right, so give that just another second. I'm gonna dump that out. Now today I am using a little bit of medium cheddar cheese. Now again, if you don't want cheese, don't like cheese, the harder the cheese, usually the lower the fat. You could use mozzarella, but honestly it just doesn't have enough flavor for this. You could use anything like a Monterey Jack, anything that you like, but again, make sure that fits your macros, make sure that fits within what you're trying to do, and don't overdo the cheese. I know they say that today the average American gets like a ridiculous amount of cheese, which actually isn't true in my household. We actually rarely have cheese in my house, so when we do eat it, it's kind of an extra treat. All right, so I'm gonna take those out. Just gonna put them in my little container, and I'm gonna throw the egg in here. Okay, and again, I'm not gonna do anything too special with the egg. I'm just gonna let it kind of roll around and kind of get, cooked. All right, so throwing that in. Okay, we're gonna give that a minute to just kind of cook all the way through. I want it to still be a little bit pliable so I can close it up like a burrito, but honestly at this point I'm not real concerned about that. I'm actually gonna eat this one right away, so it's not too big of a deal. But if you are trying to wrap them up and freeze them, you're gonna wanna make sure that I did not throw the salt in there, better do that real quick. All right, and a little bit of salt to that. There will be a little bit of salt in my cheese as well, so I'm not gonna put too much in there, but I'm gonna go ahead and give that a minute to cook. Okay. So again, hopefully that you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. It's a really great time for us in my household. We had everybody here, really, really thankful about that. As a matter of fact, super excited about Christmas. I've actually asked for nothing for Christmas just because really all that I want is pretty much gonna be here in my house. So I'm pretty excited about that. But, sometimes along with the holidays comes that extra weight gain. Now, if you just ate Thanksgiving, please don't get on the scale. I just warned all my clients, we all ate Thanksgiving. We all ate more carbs than normal. You're going to be retaining excess water. Not a huge deal until you get on that scale and you freak out because, of course, now you've put on several pounds. Just remember, when you eat more carbs, you're going to retain more water, and that's usually the situation. However, that being said, when you tend to go through the holidays and go to every party, eat lots and lots of extra carbs, do some extra drinking, that's when you actually do start to put on the pounds. So be very, very careful and selective about what parties that you're participating in. It's okay to eat clean and then pick one or two parties or just Christmas Eve to have a little bit of extra. You can still enjoy the holidays, you can still enjoy traditions and your family, and not go crazy and not go overboard and put on the extra. I think they say that we put on an extra 3 to 5 pounds over the holidays. It's not necessary, right? But you can still enjoy yourself that way. So I'm just gonna swirl this just around just a little bit. It's gonna take a second to cook. Now all I'm gonna do when I'm done is I'm gonna take my chicken sausage that I prepared in advance. Okay, I'm gonna throw just a little bit in the middle. I'm gonna add the vegetables that I just sauteed. Again, I've just got mushrooms and onions. I'm gonna throw a little bit of cheese on there. I'm actually gonna do that first once it's almost all the way cooked, just because I want it to melt and be nice and melty in there. And then when I'm finished, I'm gonna wrap it up and I'll show you what that ends up looking like. So again, if you go back through my feeds from way back when, there's been a time where I've actually done a breakfast burrito. There's actually other ways to do it. Again, it really just depends on your macros. It also depends on your gluten intolerance because most breads and biscuits and tortillas contain a whole lot of gluten. Even corn tortillas, still, we're talking about something that turns to sugar fairly quickly in your system. And of course, when you have sugar in your system, you spike insulin, which insulin tells your body to store. So that can be a problem if you're not careful. All right. So one of the other really great recipes that I've just, of course, Pinterest is my friend, right? Another one is to make a breakfast biscuit because, of course, growing up, one of my favorite things was the McDonald's breakfast biscuit, right? Loved it. Kind of found a healthier version by making my own, but these days you can actually make your own without the biscuit. You can use the egg on the outsides and put the toppings in the middle, which why not? I think that's a great idea. Anytime that you need to make something that's a little easier. Now, I know a lot of people tend to try to be a little more keto friendly. Those work really great for that as well. I'm a firm believer in not leaving out a nutrient. I really feel like there's good carbs and then there's, of course, not so great carbs. And I know people have a hard time distinguishing between the two because sometimes things sound healthy, but they're really not. However, there's a benefit to having some complex carbohydrates because they provide nutrients that we need. Things like sweet potatoes and oats, they're going to be a better option than sugar and junk, of course, because anything processed is going to be void of those nutrients. That's what we call empty calories. Okay, so it's almost done. I could also put a cover on it for a second and it would start cooking the top a little bit faster. Not a bad option. I'm trying to speed this up just a little bit. But when it's done, I'm gonna go ahead and throw all my toppings on there, wrap it up, and I have my breakfast. Now, I've already had breakfast. This is meal 2. I actually eat 6 times a day. Personally, it just works for me, but that way too, I don't go off the deep end and get overly hungry. All right, so here is my chicken sausage. Now, the Isernio's actually makes 3 flavors that hopefully you can find in your store. Now, guys, if you're back east, you're gonna struggle to find this. You might have to find an alternative. I haven't seen Isernio's. I've got multiple clients back in that half of the United States, and they really struggle to find stuff like this. So you might have to find a different brand, but they do carry, this is the breakfast sausage. They also have an Italian sausage and also like a sweet and spicy or something like that, a little bit hotter, which not really my gig, but any of those work great. What I love about the chicken sausage is that it is actually much lower in fat. It's a little healthier than, say, a pork version. It tastes just as good. Plus, again, it fits my macros no matter really what I'm doing. It really gives me some benefits there. Okay, so I think we're just about done with this. All right, so I'm gonna get ready. Again, I'm just gonna do a handful, like a tablespoon. Remember that fats contain more calories, although calories, as I've been studying and learning and researching, don't make as big of a difference as to how your body responds to it. So I'm not as concerned about using fats because, again, I'm low carb right now, and carbs are what tends to make you gain fat, especially if you're eating the really simple sugars and the junk. Okay, so I'm gonna throw a little bit of this on there, turn it down. Okay, because again, I want this to get melty. Okay, so like a tablespoon in there. Then I'm gonna throw a little bit of my chicken sausage in there. And it's still hot because I cooked it just a few minutes before we started. All right, and then I'm gonna put and I love sauteed vegetables. It's one of those things that I thought as a kid, I didn't really care much for vegetables. We used to dip lettuce and ranch to eat it. But as I get older, I love vegetables in different ways. One of my favorite things now, I love any type of squash at this point. I love yams. I love it all at this point. So I'm gonna put a lot in here. It's gonna make it really difficult to close, but it just sounds good and I'm hungry. So, take that off my heat source, make some space. Okay, and again, this is gonna have a little more, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to close up just because I've put a lot of toppings on it, but I'm okay with that at the moment because that's actually what I want. So if you're making this at home, a better bet is to use a little bit bigger pan so that it's a little thinner option, and then you can roll it up. At my house, we do tacos a little bit differently. This is actually gonna be a little too thick in order to roll it up, but the idea is the same. You just use a little bit bigger pan, swirl it around so the egg coats the whole pan, put your stuff in there, roll it up like a burrito, and go to town, right? Makes it super simple. It's kind of like a walking omelet. So hopefully that gives you some great ideas. Breakfast, I hear conflicting research as to whether or not breakfast is important. However, I really feel like it is, only because it gives you the energy that you need for the day. Also, your insulin is most sensitive and effective in the morning, so if you do, now that does not give you complete permission to have whatever the heck you want when it comes to sweet stuff or goodies or a bunch of carbohydrates, which unfortunately tends to be the American diet. A lot of us think that like bagels are healthy. Muffins, sugar cereal, any cereal. Guys, it's a processed food. I don't care if it is Cheerios, it still contains a whole lot of sugar and it's still processed. It still breaks down into your system pretty quickly. So keep that in mind, that those things, although you can handle them better in the morning, are not your best option. You really need to have a good portion of proteins in the morning to get your body going. Remember, proteins is what builds and maintains muscle, so it is important. Now, when I do carbs in the morning, I actually do a lot of oats, not instant oats, and definitely not the packets, because those contain a whole heck of a lot of sugar. Again, things that seemingly sound good for you or healthy, if you start doing some research, you're gonna discover real quick that it's not as it seems. And of course, that's what the big food industry wants you to believe, that if they market it that way, you should believe it's healthy. But you got to do your own research. You need to be your best advocate and know what you're eating, why, and make sure that it's healthy and it works for you. So until next time, by the way, next weekend I will not be doing Meals with Melissa. I so apologize. I will be in Mexico. Long deserved. You know, it was one of those things that when we decided to do back-to-back shows this year for coaching, we decided we needed a good vacation afterwards, so we're going to be gone for a couple of days. But after that, I'll be back and ready to roll because, of course, it's Christmas time, so now we've got to get some Christmas recipes out. Totally excited about that. Anyway, have an incredible weekend, you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Until next time, that's Meals with Melissa. Have a good one.